Hi guys. Today I decided to take a more peaceful approach to my video and use this time to not only speak to you all, but also better tune in with myself and the earth and my mission and just everything. So I've noticed myself feel stints of burnout each day and over the last few weeks, and I would gather enough regeneration and rest to feel good again, and then I would use that just to go right back into my work. And there's always something to do, so I'm definitely a workaholic, or like a work addict. Like there was at least a year or two where I couldn't think of a time I took a day off. And there was a time when it was even worse. I remember my ex telling me that I was a workaholic and saying that I needed rehab. And I didn't really take it seriously, but eventually when I hit rock bottom, and just felt everything, life, relationships, work, health, felt like everything was at its end, or at its lowest point, I realized that she was right. Rehab is just what I needed. And right now I'm in the Scottish countryside, looking over the ocean, rolling hills. I'm on a sheep farm. I don't have any neighbors. There's a castle over the hill right there. I'm sitting on about 2 or 3 inches thick of moss and grass, full of life and beautiful nature, flowers. I'm sitting on a hill in Teletubby Land as we speak. And I have Scottish roots, the McRae clan, apparently. So I'm in the land of my ancestors in a way as well. So it feels good. It feels like I'm getting grounded and rooted, and being out of the city, out of London, just feels very nice. It's hard to imagine even going to the grocery store right now. We're just loving being in our home, just really getting recalibrated. So I've made a point today to only take 2 calls. I turned my 3rd call into just a little game of ping pong voice notes, and that worked out. So I'm trying to diminish the amount of time I spend on my computer today. Just be a little less output and go, and lessen the innate desire to solve problems and get ahead and just kind of chill. And that's been really nice. And I think when you get into that state, you actually find that when you put yourself to these brief little mini deep work sessions in that day of rest, they're actually just as productive, if not more. So the calls I did today were very effective calls. Kickstarting a new phase with a client and kicking off an initial phase with another client. Very quick, very energized. They didn't go too long. They weren't time wasters. So it felt good. It felt like just what I needed. Like I said, the point of this episode is to just explain where I'm at and touch on what has been helping me. And I guess that's ultimately the whole point of this channel, is to explain where I'm at and provide a lens into my experience of growth and challenges and friction and success and insight. And hopefully that, in a way, allows for some insight and self-evolution for yourself. That's ultimately the goal, right? We all want to get better and help others do the same and benefit our own lives with that sharing. So that's what I'm doing. I was thinking last night about how two of the most influential characters that I've learned about are Buddha and Jesus. And I didn't really learn about Buddha until the last 2 years, but Jesus I grew up learning about. And if you think about who they were in their life, they were humans just like us, and they would walk around relatively humbly, and they didn't seek material things. They weren't necessarily even seeking power. They were just answering people's questions and helping people and kind of opening people's minds and paradigms. And that caused, this collision of awareness and this inflection point for humanity that allowed for stories to be told about them and the movement to kind of carry on. And it's been used and abused in, so many different ways. So I'm not really one for packaging it and using it to make everyone conform to certain rules that may or may not have been from that person. But at the core, it was a person that was, simply teaching and acting in a way that was virtuous and beautiful and poetic. And they're often represented as barefoot, just walking in humble clothes and looking at, the most revered people on earth, from kings and, wealthy people to poor people and homeless people, and they had the same view of them. They were just there to help, and they didn't really care who you were. That didn't really impress them, the status. I was thinking it's pretty interesting that we all seek and chase status so much. Material things, what people think about us. We have this vision of who we are and who we can become, and we like to think about how people that we know or don't know will be envious or jealous of us, or will prove people right or wrong. And we attach to these different narratives. We want to make our parents proud, and we want to make our enemies jealous, and we want to prove our exes wrong, and all these different things. But in reality, that's all just a distraction. You can use it as little teachings and lenses to give you insight into where you're at and to where you need to be. But it's all just a distraction from presence and true connection to your purpose and your mission. And yeah. So it is just a funny game that we're in, right? We don't know exactly how to play this game. We just showed up in a baby's body and we're trained by two humans that we were given. Everyone has different circumstances and situations, obviously. Some people were raised without parents and with one, or there's many situations, but we were all given this experience, and then we were raised, and then we create all these narratives, and people tell us narratives, and then we go out into the world, and then we gather people around to uphold the narratives and the patterns that we think are right and we think are wrong. And that's a big one. Like, when you have a certain addiction to a vice or a pattern, a negative pattern is a vice, basically. They're basically either used to be like, there's a narrative, like a justification, or there's a numbing or a distraction. So people go and like party, or people watch, binge watch shows, food, drugs, all kinds of things. But we gather the people around us that accept the vices that we deem are okay, and then we judge people for the vices that we think are bad. And so there's people that everyone's doing good and bad, and then people are deciding what they do that is bad is actually okay because of blah, 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 blah. And they'll figure out how to hide things they do to not fully face them, or they'll figure out how to justify them. And then we judge everyone else. It's a really interesting playing field. And then we're supposed to deal with that while also paying our bills, while also dealing with all of the society, politics, economics around us. And then it's no wonder we forget about the earth and our bodies and our hearts. And it's those little things or big things that come up in our lives that eventually happen to everyone, old age, sickness, and death, and ourselves or others, that slowly wake us up to what actually matters. Like if you were to sit on the earth and just be in it long enough, you would realize that you're an animal. You're this divinely connected animal. And I was actually sitting in the grass this morning with my daughter, and she had a little bit of a rash, so we've been trying to get her out of her diaper and into the sun a little bit more. And this was kind of the first time that we really let her, because she's kind of crawling, about to walk, so she's a little bit more mobile. And so she's in the grass and she's able to move around and explore and tinker with things. And I realized, like, she's an animal. She is an earthly creature, and she's obviously smart. She's a human. But she's an animal. Like we're literally like crawling around. She's crawling and she's seeing bugs and she's trying to pick them up. And she sees a snail and she picks it up and she wants to collect it. And she's putting things into little holes in the tile in the ground, and she's walking on the different plants and looking at the bugs flying on the flowers. And she's learning how to be, like, if we just raised her up in nature, she would be totally okay with it. She would fully enjoy it because that's naturally her habitat. But we raise her in these boxes and we teach her that we live in these boxes and outside we utilize for certain things. But this is where we tend to be, is on this like flat, composed, manufactured world. And it's slowly like brought away from the electric forest earth that we live on. One exercise that has been helpful for me over the last 2 years or so is the idea of just breathing in and breathing out and trying to consciously stay with that count of in, out, in, out. And eventually you'll find that you're thinking about some random topic, or I should have done this, or I need to do that, or I'm hungry, or whatever it is. And then if you can remember somewhere in that mess of being lost, oh, I was in my breath. I was counting my breath. What happened? You can start to decompose the state of your mind and see, whoa, I have a long ability to focus or a short ability to focus. And you can start to ask why and utilize that data and that experience, that experiment to better understand the mind and your state of mind. Because I'm on my second in-breath and I'm already thinking about something I could say. Obviously, I'm being filmed, so I'm supposed to be speaking. I was in Portugal 3 years ago, and I was looking up on Spotify for some like Tibetan monk chanting music to like meditate to or something, and I think I typed in like Buddhist monk chant or something, and this Buddhist monastery from Queensland, Australia, called Dhammagiri popped up. Very small, they don't have many followers, and I played it, and all of a sudden I just like found myself continuing to play it, and I noticed my friends were like, "Is this in English?" Like they couldn't understand it because they had accents, but it was totally English, but it was almost like a foreign language if you weren't fully present with it. And you can look it up, Dhammagiri. But I started to learn about the Buddha that way. I never really, I'd see the little figurines and hear people talk about the Buddha in like very brief ways, but I never learned the story or the frameworks, like the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths and all the different frameworks. And that's all it is just these frameworks to figure out how to see life in a way that is released from the madness and is able to give you a path to enlightenment, which is essentially just like all-knowing, and whatever that means to you. True knowledge and deliverance, I think is what he says. And he is a prince, and his dad is trying to convince him to be, the next king, and he doesn't really want to. He doesn't understand the meaning of life, and so he asks his dad if he can go see his kingdom because he's not really allowed to go out. And he convinces his dad, if I'm going to rule this kingdom, can I go see it? And his dad's like, okay, yeah, you can leave this pleasure palace, because he's trying to convince him that everything is great. Just look around. It's all shiny and beautiful and perfect. I just want you to be happy. Here's all this perfect. And he's like, well, let me go see the kingdom if I'm to rule this. And so his dad's like, okay. So he gives him a chariot and a charioteer, basically a chauffeur and a limo, 2,500 years ago. And so he heads out into the town with his chauffeur, and he sees an old person, and he's never seen an old person because he's been in this pleasure palace. And so he's like, what is that? And his chauffeur is like, that's an old person. And he's like, do we all get old? And his chauffeur says, yeah, we all get old. And then they keep going, and they find an old, very sick person, probably someone that was so sick they were clearly unwell to the point of dying soon. And he asks, what is that? What is this person? And that's a sick person. And he says, do we all get sick? And the chauffeur again says, yes, we all get sick eventually. And then he sees a corpse, and he says, what's that? And that's a dead person. And he says, do we all die? And the chauffeur says, yeah, we all die. So this makes, the future Buddha, I think of the Bodhisattva, I think his name. Again, I'm not an expert, but he sees this, and he's like, okay, so life is complete madness. Like, people die and get sick and get old. What are we seeking all this pleasure for? We're all inevitably going to this path, and we're not prepared for it. And we're just blinding ourselves until the day comes where it's in our face. And so he goes on this path of like when he's in the city, actually, he sees some monks, and he says, well, who are they? And, oh, those are monks. And so he says, they look like they're in the most peace. And so he seeks that. And so he begins his path of, meditation and working with these monks in these monasteries. And then he eventually gets to the point where he wants to know the true meaning. Like, he understands all these things that the monks have taught him, but he wants to get to the point where he knows the true meaning of suffering and the meaning of life, and just understand it all. And so he goes on a journey, I think for 5 years. I forget, it could have been 5 months. But anyways, he goes on a journey for a long time, and eventually he finds himself under this Bodhi tree, and he says he's not leaving that until he understands it all and reaches total enlightenment. He goes through this crazy journey that night and eventually comes out the other side fully enlightened. And he goes back to the monks that he was working with, and they feel a little abandoned, and so they're a little skeptical. But he says, "Have I ever lied to you guys?" And they're like, "No, I guess that's true. You have never lied to us, so I don't really see that you would be lying to us." And he's like, "Well, because he's trying to tell them that he was fully enlightened." And so he said, basically he says, "My friends, what I've learned is that everyone has this innate ability and potential to awaken. And there's these frameworks to get there." And so they say, "Okay, well, what's step one?" And he says, "When I breathe in, I know that I'm breathing in. When I breathe out, I know that I'm breathing out." That's step one on this crazy realization of someone that we, all know of, 2,500 years later. We barely know of people 50 years ago or 100 years ago, 2,500 years ago, Not only like a few people know, like the world has heard his name. So, pretty powerful. The breathing in and the breathing out. And again, that realization that of old age, sickness, and death, I think the people that experience hardship in life at whatever level or stage and way, it's these opportunities to wake up from the madness of the distractions. You might lose someone or have a near-death experience of yourself or someone you love. Some moment will just click, and you'll realize what matters more than what you thought mattered. And slowly that will start to domino effect in all the areas of your life where you can finally find a new layer of meaning. And I don't think there's some exact destination that you need to be in. And I don't think that being in a certain space versus someone else makes you better or worse. It's just, it is what it is. And you find what makes you happy. Find what makes you helpful to the world. And you did it. It's not a competition. It's not a comparison show. It's for you to feel well and to make a better world around you. And so if you could tap into where you don't feel well, where you don't feel aligned, where you feel tension, or where you feel ease, you need to understand yourself and feel your body, feel your environment, feel your work life, your love life, your mission, your talents, your skills, your home, like what feels off and why, and how can you come back, and how can you calibrate, and how can you improve your environment and your experience, and how can you make the best with what you have, but also seek better, and how can you let go of attachments of things that you wish would be for yourself or for others, and how can you just accept what is, and for yourself and for others. I find that with family is really powerful. You can wish your family was a certain way, or be frustrated with the quirks and the annoying things they do, and you're kind of stuck with them in some way, right? You didn't choose them and they are yours, and you can distance yourself, or maybe you can't, whatever the situation is. At the end of the day, you can't will someone to change. You You can't wish someone to change. You can just send them support and love at whatever distance you're capable of and hope that they do grow. And you can lead by example. And the best way to lead by example is taking responsibility with what you can control and trying to be the first to forgive, the first to apologize, the first to grow and let go and just love and accept. I found that with my family. Just like, oh, why are they this way? And it's so annoying they do this. And you know, it wasn't this chronic issue in my life, but there would be moments of this friction. And there was a point where I was just like, so what if they do this or that? I'm so lucky I get them in my life. And their quirks are fine. They could have way worse quirks. And some people are dealing with way harder cards than me. So my advice can only go so far, but that's what I found. My dad committed suicide 6.5 years ago. And he was like my hero. Like, I have his middle name. I always, ever since I was little, I just wanted to be with my dad. I loved my dad. He was the strongest, handsomest, funniest, best guy. He was my idol. And still is, And just finding out that, getting the call that he shot himself, and that surreal experience that is my worst nightmare. And then going into life and not feeling safe and racing to get money to protect myself and my family and create all these narratives and this lore of where he is and why and how I'm connected and what makes me okay with this earth being so scary. Just like Buddha with old age, sickness, and death. It's like, this was my moment of, what? People die? Your father, your idol, dies in that way? He's right here in front of me and he's not alive, I can't call him. Like, just completely. Like, I've only lost great-grandparents up until this point. And here I am, like 23. Just, whoa, I just moved to New York a week before that at the time. So New York was very scary and just high stress. And I just put myself into work mode and just worked. Lived in a studio with my friend, so I was never crying. I'd sometimes cry in the shower, but just not enough. So I was storing all that trauma and that fear and just that, I could still feel it. To be completely honest, I can still just feel the grief. And I still don't fully get it. And there's moments where I just feel so sad about it. And it's just like, it still doesn't feel real. It's still like, it still feels like a dream. And then you have these feelings of, wait, this will happen to other people in my life. And you're like, you can't even, like, what? And then it will happen to you. Your own self will die. It's just like, holy crap. It's just so intense. No wonder we cling to vices and distract ourselves and get mad in traffic and worry about all these little things, because the big things are so scary, so intense. And then we're just like on YouTube trying to figure out how to make ClickFunnels. It's like, call your mom. I don't know. We got to do both because we got to pay bills and we got to enjoy life. But also, like, call your mom. Tell her you love her. Call your dad. hug your child, like love. And it's something I still forget every day. Like within 5 minutes after this video, I'll be like thinking about something else. So yeah, that's my journey. One thing before I wrap this up is every time I'm dealing with these intense challenges in my life, whether it's like tension in the body or tension in the mind and fear and anxiety or business stress, money stress, like building success, like good things too. I think it's crazy to me that there's people out there that are dealing with this too. Mostly the challenging sides, where it's like I'll get anxiety and my mouth will get dry and I'll just feel so like in such a state of fear and just like, oh, like I don't feel okay. I need to get home. And I feel like I'm crazy. Like there's something wrong with me because like this, no one I know does this. And then I realized, well, there's a lot of people on the earth. And there's people out there that have anxiety just like you and, you know, even worse. Can you imagine? I'm like, oh. And so that's ultimately what's brought me to making this channel. It's been a mental blockage for sure because I don't fully understand it, nor do I want to be like a creator. And I don't, you know, eventually it'd be nice for this to work in whatever way, but right now I'll still do it even if I get 1 subscriber a week, which is my current rate. I think it's less. I think it's like 2 in a month. But I'll still do it. I'll keep doing it because I've committed to it. But that's what it means to me is trying to get to the bottom of this thing of like, hey, is there anyone else out there that's dealing with this and this and that? Okay, because I figured out a solution for this one. This one I'm still completely lost in and struggling with, and this one is my next goal. Like providing that transparency and that doorway into my life so that it can help others and also vice versa. And that's what I've been figuring out with the systems I've been building is ways to understand where I can support my flaws and my limitations and also support my gifts and my you know, excelled abilities. It's also great to learn skills and edit and have gear and, you know, capture moments. So that's fun too. So if I was to leave you with anything today, it would be to figure out what matters more than what's bothering you and try to replace and reassess your life in ways where you can get rid of the things that are not worth worrying about. How can you recalibrate and create new patterns around things that normally frustrate you that don't matter? And then how can you begin to face these big things that you've been hiding from or scared of facing and truly embrace them so that you can build infrastructure around them to really be true to life and what it is, the good and the bad. So yeah, and ultimately it's just in breath and out breath. When in doubt, just sit there and breathe and clarity will come. Thank you.
Learn your own philosophies. You won't write none but many books. And as you discover your own mind, you won't intervene, no, you'll just look. And as you embrace your own body, you won't wish but seek to heal. And all I wish for you right now is that you persevere, 'cause you got something in you yeah. And yeah, it's so familiar. And you got something in your And you will search across the world and finally find what you do seek. You know the answers can't be measured by just steps but also feats. And the wisdom that you have now, you wouldn't trade it for any gold. And all I wish for you right now is that thing that you hold, 'cause you got something in you. And yeah, it's so familiar. And you got something in you. Follow me, we all just want some peace. Stuck in the same place, how can I escape? Follow me, we all just want some peace. Stuck in the same place, how can I escape? Follow me, we all just want some peace. We want the same thing, we want destiny. Follow me, we all just want some peace. We want the same thing, we want destiny.